The following episode of the Maui Chamber of Commerce's Business Matters radio show was originally broadcast on August 17, 2021.
Aloha and welcome, Maui, to Business Matters radio show from the Maui Chamber of Commerce, sponsored by Mokulele Airlines. I am your host, Pamela Tumpat, president of the Maui Chamber of Commerce. Today, we're going to cover 5G and what it means and what it's needed to get 5G on Maui. A housing update on the Hawaii Community Assets Maui County Comprehensive Affordable Housing Plan, and a real estate update and priorities. And we're going to meet the owner of Cymz Suite Creations, but it's Creations with KRE8. TIONZ. So it's going to be a fun morning. We're going to learn all about these different topics. But first, I want to welcome Cory Schaefer. Cory is the Senior Manager of Network Operations for Verizon Wireless in Hawaii. His responsibilities include monitoring, maintaining, and upgrading Verizon's statewide wireless network. So he has a huge responsibility. He has worked as a manager and engineer at Verizon for 15 years. And he has a Bsee. We're going to have Cory explain what that actually is, from the University of Pittsburgh. Aloha and good morning, Cory. I'm excited to have you on the show.
Thank you so much, Pam. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, what is a Bsee?
That's a Bachelor's of Science in Electrical Engineering.
Oh,
so I'm an electrical engineer by trade.
Okay, great. I'm sorry, I had no idea.
No problem.
I was going to look it up, but I thought, why? I'm just going to ask Cory and he can explain it. And so let's talk about 5G. I mean, we hear about it all the time. We're waiting for our phones to be at 5G. Some of us still have only 4G capacity, and some people are getting 5G, but maybe do or don't have it. What does it mean?
So thanks for having me on, Pam.
You're welcome.
5G is, so we're talking about wireless here. So just like Wi-Fi or your radio show that we're on right now, wireless signals can be encoded with information in a bunch of different ways. You've heard of AM, you've heard of FM, you've heard of Wi-Fi. Those are all just different ways to put information on a wireless signal. So 5G is the fifth generation for wireless communication for cell phones. So 2G was our old analog phones. So they were high-powered 5-watt phones. A lot of times they were installed in cars back in the 80s and 90s. And then in the mid-90s, we went to 3G, and that was our first digital communication system. And it worked pretty well, but it was mostly just for phone calls. It didn't have very fast data speeds.
Right.
So our fourth generation, we finally got decent data speeds. And now fifth generation is really just the next step from there. So what it technically is, 5G is just a protocol. So AM, FM, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, all these things, 3G, 4G, 5G, are all protocols, and a protocol is basically the rules of the road. So Similar to out on the highway, we have hundreds of cars all driving around. The reason they don't crash into each other is because there's a bunch of established rules. You know, the dotted lines mean one thing, the solid lines mean another, white lines versus yellow lines, all the stop signs and yield signs. Everybody has to learn what all those things mean in order for us to get along on the road and not crash into each other.
Right.
The same is true for phones on a network or any wireless protocol. You can't send your data at the same time as another user, or it just won't work. So it really is just a pretty boring protocol that describes the rules for how things change. So what's different between 4G and 5G is kind of the most important question. And it's not a whole lot. It's pretty technical, but most of the changes relate to how many bits of information you can actually fit onto the wireless signal. So the 3G, 4G, 5G, the wireless signal itself hasn't changed that much. It's just how much information we can cram onto it. And a lot of that's because the phones are getting better. The chips inside the phones are getting faster and smarter. So some other things that change are the time slots. We can make them shorter to make the connection faster. So we're really just updating the rules of the road for the new, faster technology that we have at the cell site and in your pocket. So you really need a capable phone. So it'll actually have a different chipset inside of it, a different integrated circuit to decode the 5G signal.
Wow. Well, I appreciate that. And early on when things were coming down the pike, I was doing some research, and I love how you explained it, right? It's, yes, some of it's a very boring protocol, but I have never heard that protocol story before. So that's, if we think about it like the rules of the road, I absolutely love that. But I did know that because the phones are changing, that it was, they were touting this as like the next wave, right, of data transmission, because everything was going to be faster and smarter. We were going to be, far more efficient, and it was going to really speed up commerce in some interesting ways as well. So, and we've got on Maui the Made in Maui County Festival, and so many of our vendors and businesses here on island have been moving over to online sites, and I know here today we're talking about phone systems, but even then they're doing so much of their online website. They're doing their website management that used to be on their computer on their phone now. So tell us, as we're looking at this, and it's very important on our phone systems, and cell phones. How do we get more 5G on Maui?
So for the same as 3G and 4G, every cell site just needs two things to work. It needs energy and a connection back to the world. So that's electrical power and generally fiber optics. And then on the other side, you need a capable phone. So those are the two technical things required. But the thing about 5G that most people, it's a little counterintuitive, is it's actually generally lower power than our 3G and 4G technologies. So because of that, we're trying to distribute the network closer to the user. So in order to get so one way to make the network faster is to get fewer people on each connection point. So what we're looking to do is put smaller, lower power cell sites in a more distributed fashion. So those are called small cells, and a lot of those would go on like electric poles, utility poles. So rather than having one cell site serve an entire town, from a mile or two away, you'd have 20 mini cell sites spread throughout the neighborhood on telephone poles. So that's an architectural change that requires us to build all that. So getting the approvals from the county, getting landlords that are willing to let us put up our stuff, and then going through zoning and all that. Those are really the requirements to move to a 5G network.
So that's a lot of work, but also I want to go back to something you just said, because that's a tremendous amount of work, and many regions right now, and I think also especially during this time of COVID, when more and more people were working from home, more and more people were using their cell phone, throughout the day than maybe more periodically. We've seen a lot of spots where we've had a lot of dropouts. I live in a particular region that has a lot of issues up in Pukalani. Calls are constantly dropping out. And so, for us to see deployment would be, get that out into these smaller cell sites is really important. But there's a lot of fear around that. And I love that you said something that I think is so important for people to understand. You said, that when you're looking at 3 and 4G, 5G is not the same level of power that 3 and 4G is. It's faster, but it takes less power, and you just deploy more smaller cells. So people are really concerned about, this frequency issue. Can you talk a little bit about, again, explain a little bit more on it's less power. Talk a little bit about, address some of the concerns that people have about the power issue and what it means to their health.
Absolutely. So, wireless signals, I like to use the example of a flashlight and a laser beam. A flashlight's perfectly safe. You can give it to a child and they can play with it. But there are lasers out there that can cut right through the human body, very dangerous. So the difference between those, a flashlight and a high-powered laser, is the power. So light is just another form of wireless energy. So the power does matter a lot. The great thing is that throughout all the generation shifts from 2G to 3G, 3G to 4G, 4G to 5G, the network has continually become lower and lower power. So I mentioned the old 2G. Yes. We were allowed to make phones that went up to 5 watts back in those days. Nowadays, the FCC limits us to 1/4 of 1 watt. So we're 20 times lower than we used to be now that we've moved to digital. The other thing is the carriers have all just made their cell sites smaller and smaller to fit fewer users on them so that they go faster. And the way to do that is to drop the power. So it's counterintuitive, but as the technology has matured, the phones have gotten lower power and the towers have gotten lower power. But that does mean you will see more towers. So more towers doesn't actually necessarily mean more energy because each individual tower has kind of been lowered down as the technology progresses. And that's true of the small cells. They're typically maybe 5 watts instead of a 40 watt on a large cellular tower. So that's something most people don't understand.
Yes.
And I think it can really help. We're going down in power, generally speaking. We're not going up.
Yeah, and that's a really common misperception. And it's something that we hear in our community a lot. People are just feeling, they're seeing expanded capabilities. They're equating, these other newer levels as being, I think, higher frequency and more power. And we're saying, okay, it's less power, and the way that we're gaining speed is by taking less people off your individual network because we're adding more of these smaller sites. The other thing that we hear, and you also addressed that as well and touched on that, is that you're looking at working with existing telephone poles. A lot of people are worried about, well, what's this going to look like in my neighborhood? Is there going to be some huge new tower? And so you're looking at doing things a little bit different. Can you talk a little bit about that plan?
Absolutely. So you touched on the frequency, and because 5G is a protocol, just the rules of the road, you can technically put 5G on any frequency. So there are higher frequency 5G networks and lower frequency 5G networks. But at the end of the day, the power is the most important thing when it comes to what we call maximum permissible exposure. We're highly regulated by the FCC with what power we can use, and we're generally, orders of magnitude below those thresholds in terms of, because like we said, we've been turning down our network over time to isolate the users. But yes, the small cell network, it's a lot of work to build it, but it is a much more future-proof version of the network because it does have the smaller cells, and then so there's fewer users, so the accessibility in terms of connecting is easier, and then the speeds are much higher because you're sharing it with fewer users. So that's a big project, but it's something that is being pursued in urban areas around the country.
Yeah, that's awesome. I appreciate you explaining that too. So this is happening all across the country, and this new framework and building of this, more modernized system gives us better connection, makes it faster. So it's something that it helps a lot with in our daily phone use, especially as more and more want to continue to work from home as we're moving out of COVID. So that's really great to hear, and I appreciate the explanation because, again, it is something that comes up in the community a lot during different community meetings, and without this understanding, and I think we need to do a lot more to help people better understand this, and the Chamber's certainly willing to be a partner in that. Without the understanding, they don't know, and it just sort of seems to breed fear. Yeah. When people don't know and they read things on the internet or wherever they're getting their data, it's great to have forums, and maybe, Cory, we can engage you in a discussion on this too in the community and have a forum on this where we can bring different people together who have, maybe different views or some people who have concern and really kind of flush through some of the things that they're concerned about. I think that would be a huge help.
Absolutely, Pam, and I think it makes a lot of sense if you think about it. Most people don't know that humans have been using wireless technologies since the 1800s. So even though your average person doesn't know that much about radio frequency engineering, there's a small group of people, of which I'm a member, who have been using this technology for a very long time, and it is pretty well understood. And again, we've been reducing the power over time. So I've never felt safer to work in wireless personally, based on all that experience. And so, yeah, it helps to have someone who actually has the direct experience. But the other thing, it doesn't take that many people to run a wireless network because it is so efficient. So RF engineers are not super common. So it's very understandable that people don't understand how the technology works and have those concerns. So I'd be happy to help spread my knowledge throughout the community as best I can. So I really appreciate the opportunity to be on the show today and do that.
Yeah, we really appreciate you because it's such an important message, and as we need, we have needs all across our island where we need to improve our sites and improve connectivity. We really appreciate that you're on today, and thank you so much for doing that. I know one of the projects coming up is a tower near my area in Pukalani. How's that going?
It's coming along. It is in for permitting, so we hope to build it early next year, maybe even sooner. So that's some great news. I met with the community almost. It's been 7 years now. It does take us a long time. It's a bit of a longer process on Maui than most of the islands, and certainly longer than the mainland. So it's a culmination of a lot of work to get that tower on the air. So we're very excited for that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I hope too that we can get that built in as soon as possible. As I said, I talked to a lot of people in Pukalani and abroad, and we get a lot of call drops right now. So we're thrilled that that's one of the areas, and I know that you're working at not just Pukalani, but you're working in places all across the island trying to improve this connectivity and this new system. So,
absolutely. Yeah, we have dozens of projects across North Maui, West Maui, South Maui. So, yeah, we really, anything that the community can do to help us push and support these projects really helps a lot, because we do tend to get a few vocal opposition folks showing up at hearings and things like that, and then it does tend to slow down or put a stop to some of our projects. So the more knowledge we can get out there about, and the more that folks who do support wireless can speak up, it can help us a lot. So we appreciate any support there. Awesome.
And that's really important because, as you said, we do have people that have concerns. We want to address the concerns. You want to address the concerns. And we really appreciate that you are getting out in the community, that you're sharing with everybody, teaching people and letting them know about the technology. With your background and history, we're so grateful to have you as a resource, because also, Cory, you do a great job of explaining this on a level that we can all understand. I've listened to some other engineers, and it's a little, it could be a little high level for everybody, but you really break it down for us, and appreciate so much that you've been sharing this with us. It's really exciting to know that it's coming, and to get to know that help is on the way, but also that this is going to take some time. It's a system that has to be built over time. You've got a lot of areas on Maui that you're looking to work in, and so we need the public support to understand the technology. Where can people get more information if they're listening into this show, or they tuned in a little bit later to Business Matters and they missed a clip of this? And of course, we will publish this podcast. We will make it available on YouTube, and we'll make it available on podcast channels, so it will be published. But where else could people get additional information to learn again about how the power on 5G is much less than what we've had over the years and been living with for a long time? Where can people, and the 1800s, love that, had no idea. 1800s, wow, that takes us way back. So where can people go to learn more information?
So the primary agency, which is has the sole responsibility for determining these power levels and things like that, is the FCC. So the most comprehensive resources are all there, fcc.gov. It's very technical, some of the information, but there are scientists who have studied this for a long time, developing these highly technical standards. So it's not always a great place for your layman, but it is all publicly available on the fcc.gov. And then honestly, in terms of RF history, Wikipedia has a lot of great information. Fezzidan was the first person to broadcast a radio transmission back in the 1800s. So if you Google Fezzidan, you'll get some information there. But the history of radio is pretty robust, and there's a lot of stuff on a lot of websites and information on Wikipedia about it.
Oh, fantastic. Well, what an exciting morning. Thank you so much, Cory, for sharing this with us. This is a tremendous amount of information, very helpful. We want to work with you, help get the word out, and encourage people. If you are excited about 5G, if you support additional broadband, if you need it in your business and your work at home, if you're a resident who's just finding your calls keep dropping and you understand that the system needs to be upgraded here because we're overtaxed on our current system and want to support, there's going to be many opportunities for you to get involved. And if you're somebody who has strong concerns, and wants to learn more, we really encourage you, go to the fcc.gov, and again, as Cory mentioned, that might be a little technical, but look up Wikipedia and learn more about 5G and research the difference in power from what we've had for years and lived with for a very long time to what we have now and how it's getting better and better. So, Cory, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I'm excited to have you on the show today and look forward to connecting with you again really soon.
Thanks so much, Pam. Really appreciate the time.
Our pleasure. You have a beautiful Maui day.
You too. Aloha.
Aloha. We'll be right back after a brief message from Mokulele Airlines.
Mokulele Airlines operates the largest commuter airline hub in the country, right here in Kahului. Fly Mokulele from Kahului to Molokai, Lanai, Hana, Waimea, Kona, and now Hilo. Mokulele also operates the only flights between Kapalua and Honolulu. There is never a middle seat on Mokulele, and every seat has a window and aisle. Visit mokuleleairlines.com and take your next flight from the newly renovated Mokulele Terminal.
And we're back, and I'd like to welcome Jason Economou, Government Affairs Director of the Realtors Association of Maui. Good morning, Jason, and welcome to the show.
Good morning, Pam. Thanks for having me back.
Oh, we're so glad to have you again. I know that you have been doing so much in the area of housing, so let's discuss housing. And I was wondering if you could share RAM's perspective and some of your thoughts on the Hawaii Community Assets Maui County Comprehensive Affordable Housing Plan.
Well, yeah, I would love to. First off, I just want to say we are super impressed with all of the work that went into the Hawaiian Community Assets Plan. And for anybody that hasn't seen it yet, I really encourage you to go to mauihousingplan.org and at least take a look at the executive summary. But if you have the time and you have the patience, try and dig through the plan a little bit. It's substantial, so it's going to take some time. But in order to have a plan that might actually be workable and have real policies that might make some impact, it takes that level of research and effort and detail. So we're super impressed with all of the work that Hawaiian Community Assets put into the plan, and as well as the outreach that they did. I mean, they spoke to people across the spectrum. From the folks who, are very far away from getting into the world of having their own home, the people in the most need, to the folks who are developing houses, and everybody in between. So this plan really takes into account the needs of everybody in the housing system, and it tries to find a balance with policies that will get Maui County back on track to meet the needs of the community. Now, with that being said, the plan is going to be difficult to implement, especially it's in its entirety. I think piecemeal is kind of the approach that the council is going for. And I think they're on a good track right now. The council has been talking about what sort of policies they're going to prioritize. And, some of them are sort of no-brainers. They want to establish a local residency requirement for for-sale programs.
Yes.
That makes sense. If Maui's public money is going into housing, then that housing should go towards Maui's public. It shouldn't be going to folks who just move here or planning on moving here. So we're behind policies like that, and updating the county's rent and sales price guidelines to better fit the reality of the housing market here. That totally makes sense. However, we are a little bit concerned that the council might be prioritizing maybe a couple of the policies that aren't really at the top of our wish list. For instance, RAM believes that we really want a home for everyone. That's our motto. That's what guides our policy. However, when the council's one of their top priorities is housing is a human right, but then they don't really define what that means, it makes us concerned that we're going to have our county council spending time sort of disagreeing over what that means, as opposed to pushing forward policies that can actually get housing. So, we're still optimistic, but we don't want anybody to get sidetracked. For instance, another one of the top 5 policies from the council that came up was dealing with, disallowing certain uses in the apartment districts. Attacking property rights is one way to get things done, but that's also a way that's going to stir up a lot of litigation and concern from people who have vested property interests. So
right.
We would hope they avoid those policies and really focus on things like infrastructure, streamlining the development process, or at least making it more predictable. Those are the policies that we think we're going to get more housing built. Increased funding for public infrastructure and streamlining the process and making it less discretionary, let's say.
Yeah, great word. I was going to say arduous, and then you said discretionary, and I thought, oh, no, that's really more on target. Yeah, that's really important. And like you said, and the Chamber is very much aligned with that, of course. We already view housing as a human right, and we already think it's highly important that we do look at, yes, we want housing for all, but we also want to make sure that with what's happening in the real estate market, we want to protect housing for our local families. We like that they're looking at how we can do that and looking at a responsible local requirement. So because we've had generations of folks who, are still living together. Families just can't, many of the generations can't afford housing on their own. We're seeing prices skyrocket. We knew from the summit we put together back in 2019 that we were going to keep seeing the median home price soar over the coming decades, and we're already ahead of the projection that we made, and we knew we would probably be ahead of it because we wanted to make sure we looked at an interest rate that was an annual interest rate increase that was, unquestionable. But it was so low that, people said, yeah, it's really low, so we're probably going to exceed that. And that was true. We did. And now, of course, with interest rates, which were even lower than the 4% we used, we're seeing a tremendous shift. And so in our minds, because the cost of housing, the longer it's delayed, and we know we've got a backlog of needed units, keeps going up the longer we delay. I think we're right there with you, right? The bigger policies that we need to focus on is, not get into discussions about whether it's a human right and how we define that, but just acknowledging that and saying, okay, what are we going to do for the residents of Maui County now to streamline this process? And that always seems to come back to, as you said, getting the development process fast-tracked and getting infrastructure in place and in government investment in infrastructure, because so many times they try and tack it on to proposals and then the proposals no longer pencil out. So I think that was a great overview of that.
And I also want to say, housing trusts. We
Yes.
we have strongly supported Nahaleo Maui over the years. Realtors founded Nahaleo Maui because we recognize that housing trusts are really the way to keep housing affordable in perpetuity. It's the only sensible way, and that's how we get away from houses being built that are affordable and then having them fall out of affordability 5, 10, 20, 30 years down the line. We really need multi-generational solutions, and a housing trust is that solution.
Right. That's a very good point. Love that. Thank you so much for that overview, Jason. And again, we do encourage everybody to please go look at this Maui housing plan. It's mauihousingplan.com. Review it, look at the executive summary, go through it. There's a lot of great gems in there. And I think RAM and Cymbree are very aligned in that what we just want to do is start focusing on the things that get units built. We've spent a lot of time talking about this stuff, and every time all we do is talk, we just lose ground. So it's time for action and finding those things, minding the plan, working on the things that we can start putting things in place and building now is really what will be most beneficial to our community.
Yeah, and we have an action-oriented council, which is great to see.
Yes, and it is exciting to see. And this is a perfect place to focus attention because this has been a long-standing priority. So we're excited that they're moving forward with this expeditiously. And we're thrilled that they waited for the plan as well because, it is a very comprehensive plan. It also is a very expensive plan. But, I think I love that they're trying to focus on where there's agreement as well and bring people together with that. So that's great to see. The other thing on everybody's mind, Jason, and who better than you to give us that update, is what's happening with Maui County's real estate. We've seen that we've been over $1 million median home price for a while now. If you can please give us an update.
Yeah, it really comes down to inventory. Most of us in school, we got some basic education on economics, and we all saw that supply and demand curve. And what you're seeing now is the impact of that basic economic principle, where when supply is super low, demand goes up and prices follow. So that's largely what's impacting things. When it comes to the average home prices, that price should not be tracked by the general public too much because that can easily be skewed by the high profit sales. There was that one home that sold for $45 million. So that's going to absolutely skew the averages. When it comes to the median, that's generally what we track because that usually does a better job of telling the tale of the market. However, in this situation where we've had very low inventory for, years now, we've been talking about low housing inventory. That low-hanging fruit, the stuff that was in that relatively affordable territory, has been bought up now. And so we're only dealing with sort of higher-priced units. And then, even then, because of the low inventory, the prices are getting pushed up. And it's painting this very dire picture for your average Maui resident who really can't compete in this market. RAM tracks the Affordability Index. That's one of the numbers that we track. And that basically says how much of the median sales price can the median household income afford. And right now we're at a really low number. We're at like 37%. And that's depressing for a lot of our members who are tracking these prices and who, some of them don't have their own homes and they're saving up to buy a home. They have kids, they have family members that want to buy a home. So it's a really difficult time for Maui County because we've got a 20-year housing deficit that we need to make up. And the inventory that's on the line, we're competing with lots of folks. The good news is the majority of sales transactions over the past year have been Hawaii residents buying property. We hear all these stories about foreign investors and people from the mainland. If we're talking about foreign investors, that's roughly 2% of the sales transactions that we've been seeing over the past year. So that's a really small number. of foreigners buying up property here. And then when it comes to other American citizens, that's a significantly higher number. That would go, just under 40%, if I'm not mistaken, is folks, from other U.S. areas who are buying properties here. But the thing that we should keep in mind is among those people, there are people that are doctors that have been recruited to come here because we need doctors in our rural community. There's also folks who have deep roots in Maui who are trying to come home who are buying properties here. So, I understand and I am completely sympathetic to the frustration of our residents who, can't get a foothold in this market saying, we need to build a wall and shut it down for anybody who's not from here buying a home. But, that's something that the realtors definitely can't do because that would violate fair housing.
Right.
And it's also something that we need to be careful with these blanket sort of angry solutions because we want our people to come back home. We do. My wife had to leave Maui for a long time before she could afford to come back here and stay. So it's just how it is. Migration goes. I'm hopeful. I'm optimistic that the councils move towards action and them actually seriously looking at this plan will help the housing market. But, to be completely honest with you, it's a rough market for folks who don't have significant assets behind them right now.
And I want to bring up savings because, this is a phenomenal time in history with interest rates low. But, we always say, it's really important to have savings and resources and build up your credit so that when you see interest rates drop like this, we have opportunities. And I'm aware of many sales where people who are local residents went out, and if you didn't see something in 24 hours, it was getting snatched up, and often by folks coming in from the mainland and had access to higher levels of capital. But I'm glad to hear that I'm glad to hear, though, that you mentioned that the local folks buying up properties is higher than I expected. So that's nice to know that we are seeing families here. And the other thing is, it's at a time where we're seeing big shifts of land. I mean, I've seen stuff up country that's 5, 10, 20 plus acres going very quickly, of prime agricultural land, and things are just getting snapped up at soaring price tags, albeit. But it's a time where it's just kind of a really wild market, and yet I see it changing the face of Maui, especially when we're also so focused on ag right now. I'm really interested to see what's going to happen in our future. But it also starts, as my dad used to always say, you have to be ready for cycle changes. And it means you need to, work on your credit, get that up, work on your savings so that when things pivot, you're ready to move. So I want to keep encouraging people that, right now we're seeing a surge, but, keep preparing for this. If this is something that you and your family are working on, keep preparing. Don't lose sight of the goal. Continue to invest in that goal so that when there's a shift, you have opportunity to react.
Absolutely. Yeah, that can't be understated enough. Buying a house is really a 10-year plan, in my opinion. And that was the approach that me and my wife had to take, too, which is we cognizantly sort of grinded for years. Living below our means as much as possible, saving as much as possible, keeping track of our credit, because we knew that even though I was, deep under a mountain of debt for a long time, that at some point we wanted to be homeowners. And it was really putting in that work and taking, crummy job after crummy job until you got that good job, and then moving up in a job. And it takes that mindful effort, like any difficult goal. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes practice. All sorts of factors go into it. It's not just luck, and we can't rely on luck when it comes to something like a home.
Right. It's too important. It's too important for us. It's too important for our children and their children. Land ownership here in Hawaii, if we want to keep our local families here and give our children opportunities, we need to plan better, and we're excited that more of that's happening. So, Jason, we've got a few more minutes, and I'd love to talk to you about what are some of the priorities for RAM.
Yeah, the first part of the year and that second part of last year was largely spent figuring out what policies in this housing plan we could advocate for and support. So really, we want to pick this thing apart. We want to have input with the council concerning the policies that we think are going to be most meaningful and impactful. So, it's not necessarily our policies that we're going to be pushing, but it's really just trying to gather support for different things in this plan. Now, beyond that, we are examining tax policy. And that's sort of, we're looking at it in a different way than RAM has traditionally looked at it. I think a lot of times RAM got this stigma about the organization, thinking that we were anti-taxes and that we were going to oppose any tax policy because it's somehow an infringement on rights. And we're not like that. We have a much more nuanced view of it. And the idea is that we don't think taxes should be punitive, and we don't think taxes should negatively impact people's property rights. And we also think that when taxed, there should be a public benefit that is recognizable to that taxation. Mm-hmm. And so, we're looking at ways that we can have the tax policy shift in a manner that incentivizes the transfer of homes between residents, that incentivizes the purchase of homes by Maui residents, and really incentivizes the actions that we want, which is more homes owned by people who are going to be owner-occupants or folks who are going to add benefit to this community.
Right.
So yeah, it's largely, this year is largely going to be focused on taxes and infrastructure as far as RAM kind of looking at what it wants for Maui County.
Well, that's great to know. And, we always appreciate hearing your views and hearing Ram's views. I know that you are sharing Ram's views, but we appreciate learning a little bit more about you as well and your views. But these are really important issues, and I've seen really Ram be a strong leader in this housing issue for many, many years, and so we're really glad to hear your input and thoughts on this plan. And again, I think it's really important as we start looking at things that we find ways to come back and have broader dialogue. You mentioned that there's sort of been a stigma associated, and I find that there's a lot of stigmas being created these days, which just divides us. And then we don't get to have meaningful dialogue. And in some of the county hearings, when people are trying to testify, again, you've got this limited opportunity to share information, but in that, there's no dialogue back and forth between the different ideas presented. It's one directional, or maybe the council asks some questions, and there's a little bit of dialogue. But we need to find ways to come together in forums and in programs where people can really see what an organization is trying to do and really fully hear and discuss different points of view and the community's points of view, and we can come up with winning solutions. So that's a big thing for us, trying to work on how we get there as well. But loved having you on the show. Always wish I had more time with you. We will ask you to come back again because you're such a tremendous resource for us. Thank you so much, and then we will connect with you again soon.
Thank you, Pam. You have a great day, Jason.
Okay, we're now going to do a quick promotional ad from our sponsor. And then we're going to come back with Cymbree Fevella, who's going to share about her amazing Made in Maui business.
Mokulele Airlines operates the largest commuter airline hub in the country, right here in Kahului. Fly Mokulele from Kahului to Molokai, Lanai, Hana, Waimea, Kona, and now Hilo. Mokulele also operates the only flights between Kapalua and Honolulu. There is never a middle seat on Mokulele, and every seat has a window and aisle. Visit mokuleleairlines.com and take your next flight from the newly renovated Mokulele Terminal.
Okay, and we're back. So I am pleased to welcome business owner Cymbree Fevella of Cymz Suite Creations, LLC. Cymbree and her husband Glenn created their business in 2014 by baking for family and friends as a hobby, which blossomed beautifully into a full-time business. Aloha and welcome, Cymbree.
Aloha and good morning, Pam. How are you?
I'm excellent. How are you today?
Awesome. I'm great. Everything is wonderful. So super blessed, and it's such a beautiful morning in Maui.
It really is. And thank you. Yes, we are so blessed, and we're so thrilled to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's our pleasure. Tell people, I love your business name. So tell people about how you came up with this business name, and how you got started, and what your inspiration was.
So when we originally started, we did research looking in the market at kind of what was out there as far as desserts, and we originally planned to do specifically cake pops. That was like our thing. After we did research, we're like, hey, you know what, we should do this. This would probably be great to do. So when we first started, we did cake pops, we did chocolate dip treats, your Oreos, your pretzel rods, your dip strawberries and stuff like that. As we started taking more requests from clients or, family members, like, hey, you should try this, maybe you should do this, we said, okay, we can't be Cymz Cake Pops anymore. We're going to have to switch our entire name to something else. So that's how we went back to the drawing board and said, okay, what can we name it? How can we define and spell creations totally different from the regular CREATIONS?
Right.
So people always get stuck on that, like, oh, wow, that's so creative. I'm like, yeah, if I'm going to have something that's going to stick in people's minds, it's not going to be spelled correctly. I just have to do things like super different. And that's how, it stuck. So I said, okay, this is going to be good. So I think we'll stick with that. So that's how that kind of began with the name placement for us. And, Sweet Creations means anything under that umbrella. The sky's the limit as to what can be created. Anything from cookies to pies to tarts, cupcakes, cake pops. I mean, you name it. Any dessert can fall under that umbrella of that name. So we love it. So.
I love it too. I absolutely love it. And then the 8 in the middle of it kind of reminds me of 808 State. So I mean, it would just everything is just so cute, and also abbreviation Cymz, CYMZ, Sweet Creations. I think it's so awesome and fun. You're definitely right. It's something that sticks out for you. And
definitely.
Yeah.
And Cymz is kind of like, everyone in my family or people who know me really well, like, they call me Cym. They don't call me, hey, Cymbree, so it's like, okay, Cym is kind of good, kind of cool, and then add the Z, so it kind of just goes with the slang and the business name, so it worked out great.
It does. That's so true. Well, tell us about your products and your preparation.
Yes, so we have multiple products that we offer. We offer truffles, we have cupcakes, we have our own line of our new tartlets that we make and create by hand. We have cookies. Ube cookies is like the most popular cookie that everyone loves, although we offer red velvet and chocolate chip. We have a blue monster, a white chocolate macadamia nut, red velvet with Oreo, fruity pebble with marshmallow. But those are kind of like the flavors. We do parfait cups, cake cups, cakes. We also are now offering letter and number cakes, which have been super trendy. So people have been loving that. The clients come to me and ask me for certain things that I don't normally make, so they kind of inspire me to add to my portfolio of things that I can make if it's custom. Like I made a surfboard cake last year for someone's husband for their 50th birthday, actually their birthday, and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to make a surfboard cake. So, I just had to blow up the image, cut out the cake, and make the layers, and it worked out like amazing. Even a house cake, realtors come to me and they ask me, hey, can you make me something custom, like a house? I'm going to welcome this family who just purchased from me. I'm like, oh, a house cake? Okay. So it's just, they inspire me to be better, to do better, to create, to also, add to my profile also, and, just to keep me in the loop of always trying to get to the next level, to do better, and, try different things that I don't normally do. So.
Well, I love that, and that speaks to the creations part, right?
Yes,
like you said, all things in the dessert world. but it's I appreciate you sharing this, because sometimes people see a product line and then they only think of a business for that. And it's nice to know that if they have special requests, you're somebody they can call, and you'll work with them to create that thing that they've got in their mind that they don't know how to do.
Yes, exactly.
And I hope you have all of this in an amazing portfolio that we can see. Is there a place we can look up all these exciting new things that you're doing?
Yes, so we do have Instagram, we do have a Facebook, and we do have a website. So our website, we usually update often to feature new pictures that I'm working on of uploading. But Instagram is like the platform that we use that you can see all of those things on.
That is so fun, and it's for those people who watch the national shows like Cake Boss and how we see how they have to innovate too. So it's nice to know that we have our local own innovator right here with Cymz Sweet Creations doing amazing things, and of course cake pops are still infinitely popular. I laughed when Starbucks started selling cake pops. I mean it's that widespread, folks. We still have a great market for cake pops. And where else can people find, Cymbree, where else can people find your products?
So we service a lot of local accounts that we thank so much, and we appreciate them, and we've been with the majority of them for so many years. We are at Maui, that's on Ko'okahi Street. We have TJ's Warehouse in Wailuku.
Okay.
We just recently started our sweets with Vaughn's Chicken, which is like 2 streets from where our bakery is located.
Okay.
Pukalani Superette up country, and then Island Grocery in Kahului. Tamura's Market in Wailuku across next to the post office, and Genki Sushi in Maui Mall.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
And Genki Sushi, so it's your pastries going around on the little conveyor belt.
Yeah, my tarts are just there. So we switch and rotate our tarts, whether it's lilikoi tarts, our ube chantilly tarts, or sweet potato halpia tarts, or our matcha, which is like the green tea people like too. So they kind of have a rotation of the tarts there. Yeah.
That's so cool. Well, we're out of time, but thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And mahalo Maui and the community for supporting us for the whole 2020. Even though it's kind of crazy, you guys showed up, and we love you guys so much. Thank you for all the support.
Thank you. Aloha. Well, that's our time. It goes quick for Business Matters today, sponsored by Mokulele Airlines. I'm Pamela Tumpot, president of the Maui Chamber of Commerce, wishing you blessings and best wishes for a beautiful Maui day. And if the Chamber can help, we're only a call away. 244-0081. Aloha.